Friends, wherever you are, thank you for dialing into this broadcast. And to repeat myself ad nauseum, please can I ask you to share the hell out of the link? It's very important you do that. Our Lazarus Initiative.com website has just gone down a few minutes ago. Well, that's no surprise to me. The deep state, I imagine, are watching very closely this broadcast. It is being syndicated to a number of other channels right now. So either way, I know we've got an audience out there, and that's going to be growing before the end of the broadcast. We will retroactively put the broadcast up on the Lazarus embed, TV embed on a LazarusInitiative.com. So either way, you'll get to see it there. In the meantime, let's just discuss briefly where we're at. Status quo, Wednesday, 27th of October, 2021. Today's panel discussion is about revolution in Israel. Israel, one of the most important places on earth geostrategically. To many, it is the single most important place on earth, and that's for obvious reasons, because Israel represents the archetypal node that is at the epicenter of our religious devotions in all of the primary faiths. Well, when I say the primary faiths, I'm talking about Judaism and Christianity essentially. But the bottom line is that, as Bishop Ria Abu al-Assal, our commissioner and dear friend, the Bishop of Jerusalem, keeps reminding people of the world, peace will only come to the world when it comes to Jerusalem. And this is something which is written into the program. It's written into the gestalt. We all know that the Palestine-Israel divide is, in a sense, the thorn that is under the saddle, and it's in the back of the camel, in order to maintain a constant dystopia, a constant fractiousness in the zeitgeist. So we need to look very closely at what is happening in Israel for many different reasons, not least because, in a sense, it's the most weaponized society on the face of the earth. It has a sort of quadrillion-dollar war machine behind it, given that Israel, the state of Israel, the corporation state of Israel, is the franchise of the Anglo-American corporation, which itself is a franchise of the Vatican complex and the black papacy, the Jesuitical element behind the Vatican complex. To most pedestrian people, this sounds like nonsense, but then to most pedestrian people, I'd invite them to look out their window on the streets of Tel Aviv or Jerusalem right now and tell me what you see. Because what you see is a fucking twilight zone. It is not normal. What's happening in Israel is Saturnian, Luciferian, satanic in extreme. It's deeply troubling, because if it follows through in Israel, it follows through in the rest of the world. The devils are passing statutes dressed up as laws without consulting the Knesset. That is a desperately serious We're definitely being messed with today, folks. Just so you know, this was happening in yesterday's live broadcast with the leader of the Australia One political party, Ricardo Bossi, who's just made a huge statement to the magistrates calling the government out on treason. And my broadcast was tampered with every 15, 20 minutes. I might drop out for a few seconds. I'll be back in. We have a bypass mechanism here. Let me cut to the chase. FDA have approved vaccines for children in Israel. They're about to go for your babies, friends. I want to introduce Rotem Brown onto the panel, who is an attorney who owns a private law office in Tel Aviv, and she's one of the founders and pillars of the Israeli Investigative People Committee. And together with her fellow attorney, Irit Yankovic, she is part of a legal duo that filed numerous claims to the High Court of Justice against government violations of human rights and dozens of letters and other legal actions and initiatives, including a mass complaint that was filed against the Israeli government by over 60,000 citizens in police stations all over Israel. Rotem, you're very welcome.
Hello, everybody. Hello to all the good citizens of the world. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. Let me also bring on side Iris Portugali, along with her husband Ofer, has been leading one of the most groundbreaking jazz ensembles in Israeli culture for over 30 years. On October the 15th, she resigned from her position as academic director of the Rimon Music School, the leading and largest music school in Israel, due to her firm opposition to the Green Passport policy. Iris, you are greatly welcomed here today.
Thank you for having me. My honor.
Very, very, very good to see you. I'm also going to bring on board Raphael Ben-Dor, media activist and founder of Nowhere. What a great name. Israeli Uncensored website channel, a social activist website translating and delivering awakening knowledge from around the world to the Israeli people on subjects of the NWO, New World Order, health and personal development. Raphael will talk about advancing to the new world that we can create, turning to higher morals, education, values, natural health, and aligning with divine codes of God's creation in everyday life. Well, I'll leave it to you, Raphael, to describe what you mean by that, but you're greatly welcome here today.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Great to be here. Thank you.
And let me just bring on our last guest, Adam Atias, founder of the Revival Forum and organization of the Law of the People, founder of the Habima protest, and owner of the False Positive program and the real-time news site. Greatly welcomed, Adam. You'll have to unmute your microphone.
How are you, Sasha?
Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too.
Folks, thank you for all joining today. Let's have some fun. Let's pick up a stick and let's beat the brains out of this creature called the State of Israel, which is the state of insanity. I don't know who wants to go first, but Adam, as I have you and your delectable haircut on my screen, I'm going to ask you, what is your 3 minutes on the status quo in Israel today?
Well, Israel is a very important state for many people, as you mentioned. But the important for the Israeli subject right now is because we are the laboratory of the world. First of all, they test the vaccines and all kind of manipulation on the mind. They doing those tests in Israel first, and then they exit it to the rest of the world. So we're kind of a petri dish for you to see and to prepare for what's coming next to you.
Right, and that was my point. Somebody needs to mute their microphone. Thank you. There we go. That was my point earlier, is that what happens in Israel is going to franchise around the rest of the world very quickly. The same is also true of Australia and of Canada to some great extent. But thank you.
And
for
New
that.
Zealand.
And New Zealand, yes, of course. I mean, that being part of the Five Eyes. Iris Portugali, let me ask you, what is your 3 minutes on the status quo?
The kids, the children, okay? We are, it's horrifying when you already know what's going on and how they lie and lie and lie, and you realize what's coming next, you know. But also the third shot, I have to say, less people got it. So I have some kind of a hope that you definitely see more awakened people, and you definitely see less of us are afraid from the corona, you know. And what else? I'm very surprised. I resigned 2 weeks ago. And when I wrote a post about it on Facebook, I really didn't expect so much love and appreciation. I didn't expect that, because after like 15 or I don't know 20 months of getting, curse and and hate, suddenly I realized that something have changed, and I get a lot of appreciation, love, and the color is different now. So.
Yeah. Well, good. All those are very, very positive signs that you've just described. And I have to say that what you've just described is commensurate with what I'm also sensing. I'm genuinely sensing that the Saturnian element of this new world order complex is moving on to the back foot increasingly right now. And Ricardo Bossi, the political leader in Australia, who I spoke to yesterday, says categorically that's happening in Australia. He said the Great Awakening is a wildfire that's lighting up people's hearts across the country in Australia. That's very important to hear. Rotem, what is your 3 minutes on the status quo, please?
So it's true, there are two forces playing in Israel and probably all around the world. On one hand, we have the Great Awakening and people wanting to be sovereign again and are willing to take responsibility for their life, for their health, and realizing that the state is not to be trusted. I'm sure it's not only for Israel. On the other hand, we have other forces, so-called science, that has become a religion, in my opinion, and especially the medical science, and also all the legal aspects where here in Israel, the legal system is not supporting justice as I would expect it to. The High Court of Justice does not function as a High Court of Justice. We have been kidnapped by the government. The Knesset has been abolished. There are a few people who got a lot of power, and in my opinion, are using it irresponsibly. Also, maybe they don't even act on their own behalf, which is my deduction of the situation. We're trying to use every legal tool that we have, and also we are inventing tools that were never ever been dealt with before. We will talk about it later, but
Okay.
really, it's all about people taking the sovereignty back
Yes.
and becoming citizens instead of subjects.
Very good. I mean, that's a curious way of putting it. Of course, the citizenry is partly the problem. Talk about citizens of Rome and all of that. So it is forcing us to look closely at the meaning of words and the meaning of the original treaties and covenants and social contracts that were laid forth. And I think that's the great beauty, Rotem, of what's happening in the world today. Last year, this whole era of COVIDiacy is forcing us to really narrow down our focus to pure truth, and then conduct right action in our lives in order to extricate ourselves from this labyrinthine deception. You talk about the judiciary misbehaving. Is this the political? You're saying that the political element is leaning on the judiciary, or the judiciary is just corrupted? Where is the issue coming from as it relates to the courts in Israel not conducting themselves according to their mandate?
I would not say that they are being corrupt, but more that they are being mentally kidnapped to ideas and conceptions that are misleading, and the trust in the health services and in the government is very high, but and has no basis in real life. Most of the people who run the healthcare here, or the health system, or administrations, are in the middle of they have serious conflicts of interest, and they are highly influenced by pharma.
Okay.
Also, you know all this. I think everybody who is watching
But
this,
then surely that's corruption by definition. That's corruption, surely.
they don't even know that they're doing it.
Okay.
It's like a fish that doesn't know it swims in the water, and unless you take the water, and then the fish suddenly realizes it's something. People swim in their opinions. They swim in their administrative environment, thinking that what they're doing is okay and that they are not influenced, and that their
Yeah.
judgment is not colored, but it
Yeah.
is.
Okay, so it's the conditioning. It's the social and cultural conditioning. Raphael, your comments, please. 3 minutes on the status quo. You'll need to unmute. I'll do it for you. There we go.
Yeah, sorry. Well, thank you for being here. I've got quite a bit to say, and I think what we're experiencing here in Israel, and definitely around the world, definitely in Australia, definitely in Canada, these places are different from other parts of the world by being isolated. Canada is pretty much isolated in America. Australia, I've been living there for 7 years, and it's very, it breaks my heart to see Melbourne the way we see it today. And Israel is we're surrounded by language. We're separated by language, and all of these things allow the globalists, if you call them like that, or New World Order, if you want to call them like that, and to continue the dumbing of humanity. And what's happening, and what Rotem actually said, people in different positions may or may not know what they're doing, and I'm inclined to think that they actually do know what they're doing, and they're using the tools the system gives them to postpone things in order for the plan of the globalists to continue while the people are still getting dumber by the mainstream media. And I think that's what happening. And the good news is that we can all see the uprising. And I'm not just talking about the uprising of humanity, but the personal uprising of people, which getting to the understanding that we need to come back to initial codes, divine codes of natural law. And once we focus on that, things start to change. First of all, in our immediate surrounding, in the way we respond to things, and collectively, we actually change things. So that's how I see it.
Very good. Okay, so it's an almost impossible labyrinth for us to move through because of the conditioning. The social conditioning is one piece that Rotem just spoke to, and I think that's a very important piece. But there's so many other elements that are afflicting humanity at the same time. I mean, we're being poisoned, so forget about social conditioning. I mean, psychological and emotional trauma-based mind control seems to be at the root of the way in which governance and administrative governance rolls out, because and predictive programming is another thing as well. So we have academia and the entertainment complex working in collusion to predictively program outcomes and objectives. So there's all of this witchery and dream spelling that's going on, and most people are in a state of acquiescence because they're in a state of shock, and people are being reduced down to thinking, well, if I just get through the day, if I just get through the week, if I just get through the month, it'll all be okay. I mean, that's a very, very shocking state of affairs in the 21st century, when we've been, by best accounts, sending people to the moon, and all the great innovations and discoveries that we've made in the last century seem to have amounted to nothing. At the civilizational level, we've reduced down to almost being medieval subjects, shuffling around, hoping that the overlords won't send the Gestapo in to kick our door down and drag us out. But that's where we're at. I want to ask a pretty shocking question of this panel. In my view, a Holocaust is absolutely underway in Israel today. I would call it a Holocaust by the true meaning of the word. Adam, your thoughts on that? You'll have to unmute yourself. If you mute, you'll have to unmute. I can't do it for you.
Okay. I think that we see the process is very disturbing. What started with fear became anxiety. After that, it became phobia, phobic from unvaccinated people. And then a specific form of phobic that called xenophobia, which is the hate of the other. We can see the line goes in that direction. We can see the government using those practices on the population, directing them to this by social engineering methods, and they doing it on purpose. This is what they're aiming for.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk briefly about the discussion that you wanted to have today. You wanted to use an academic model for us to look at, which is the
Kubler-Ross model.
Yes, the Kubler-Ross model, and then you're talking about moving from denial phase to the anger phase, but the psychological state of the collective. We're talking about the psychological state of the collective today in Israel. So speak to this as it relates to the Kubler-Ross model. Firstly, for the audience, describe what is the Kubler-Ross model.
Okay, so the Kubler-Ross model is describes the 5 stages of grief when the people go through after learning that they have a terminal illness. The model was later included for any process of loss that some subject can see, either losing a loved one, either being healed. You want to show the screen?
Yes, indeed, I can do that. I can do that from this end if you want. Let me see if I can.
Yes.
Share screen. Okay, just one moment, please. See if you can do it from your side. If you can't, I'll do it from here.
Actually, I tried it earlier. It's kind of problematic from my side.
Okie dokie. Forgive me 1 second. Okay, I've got it up here. This is called 5 stages of grief, the Kubler-Ross model. Let me see if I can share the screen now. Just call up that. Boom. There we go.
You can go to the 3rd slide.
All right, that should be it. All right, we'll go to the 3rd slide.
Yeah.
This one here.
So, as I just explained, the Kubler-Ross is a grief model. Okay, it tells us about the stages, 5 steps that we are going to have when we handle grief. So, what is our grief as a mass population right now? What have we lost that we so grieving on? People who were injured or die from the virus. That's something that we grieve. People who were injured or died from the vaccine. That's another example. But also the loss, very big other losses that we have as a collective all around the world, simultaneously for the first time in history. The loss of our privacy, the loss of our rights, the loss of freedom, and the loss of the old normal. All those are major issues that we are grieving right now as a collective.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
on
indeed.
to the 5th one. So the 5 stages of grief are: first stage is denial. This is the stage that we see the majority of the population in the world right now that are still stuck, a year, almost 2 years after the pandemic started. They're stuck in denial. They just decline all the facts and they resist to process the information that's just in front of their eyes. And they stuck on this psychological stage, the first stage. The second stage is anger. The third stage is bargaining, very important stage. The fourth stage is depression, and the fifth stage is acceptance. So that's the end point if we don't do something about it. Okay, so right now, majority of the population in the world is in denial.
Yeah.
They truly doesn't understand what's going on in front of their eyes, refuse to get the information, and if they get the information, they didn't process it enough to understand the new reality that they're living. But some of us are moving to the next step, which is anger.
Yeah.
If you can move on to the next slide, we will see that we are now in a transition phase. We are now between denial to anger. Next one. Anger is a very, very unique and important stage that we need to cherish, okay? We need to be angry right now. We need to be angry. We need to take this rage. We need to channel it right, and we need to take the motivation out of it to get people become from the passive way to the active way.
Yes.
And actually, anger is a very good motivator for these specific things that we want to do.
Very good.
Next one.
Very good.
So we need to get the anger, but we need to do it in a constructive way and not in a destructive way. We need to get the good stuff that you have in anger and use it as a big motivator for our movement. We need to be angry right now, because if we not be angry, if we won't do it, then what happened is from denial to anger, the third step is bargaining. So in this step, when we, as the people, standing up and bargaining with our governments or the new world order, we need to come with a big force. We need to come prepared to the bargaining. We need to come in the biggest form of protests, the biggest anger that we have in order to beat them at the bargaining stage. Because if we won't beat them in this stage, then it will be depression, and after that it's acceptance, and all of humanity will accept this new normal for the next 1,000 years. And that's the end of humanity. This is why the anger stage is very crucial to all protesters around the world. We need to get angry right now. As I can see it in Israel right now, the protesters are pro-love. They want to spray love. They want to do good, because those are good people.
Yes.
But the enemy that comes in front of us, they're totally bad. They are evil. We can't use those tools right now in this fight, which is crucial in this specific point in history.
Very
we
good.
need to get angry right now.
Okay. Do you want to continue speaking to the slides?
Let me see. Something that we need to understand is that the governments, the other governments, they realize it right now. The anger stage is a very problematic one because you contain a lot of rage and anger, but as you can see, the population is divided for two. We have the vaccinated people and we have unvaccinated people. Actually, we are one step ahead of the vaccinated people. That's the big difference between us. We're just a bit ahead of them. Okay, so we are already very, very angry, but they are becoming very angry, and when they will come and be angry, it will be in very big mass of anger. What we need to do, and that is crucial, is to build a structure that will contain this anger and rage of a big mass majority of the people right now that is going to this page, we need to contain it and then to direct it to the right place, to the government that fails us. Otherwise, the government will do the opposite, and they will contain the rage, and they will direct it to us, the unvaccinated people.
Yes.
So we need to build a bigger container for this, okay? This comes as a form of a really big protest that will hug them and contain them, and then show them the right direction which they need to direct their rage to the governments. You can go to the next, okay, this slide. You will understand that what is dangerous in this anger stage is that the government will turn the anger direct from them to the unvaccinated.
Yes.
In Israel, it's very crucial because what's going to happen right now is that the vaccines is going to the children right now. This is the stage that we are entering in. And when a father will give a vaccine to his child because he thinks that this is something that will protect him, and this child will die from this vaccine, the father will have a cognitive dissonance, and he will have two options. Either he's to blame for the death of his child, something that he will reject if he wants to survive, or the second option is to look for someone else to blame. Well, the governments, through the media, is already pointed in advance who's to blame in this scenario that we are about to meet very soon in Israel.
Yeah.
They already done it.
Yes. Okay, so this is the classic divide and conquer. I mean, just speaking to this, build as big a protest as possible. I've got to tell you, I'm a frontline activist, and I've been at this for over 2 decades. I don't know what the hell this means, build a big protest. My understanding and knowledge is that governments and the military-industrial complex, the intelligence fraternity, are in a very conscious collusion where they factor in protesting, they factor in petitions, they factor in all of this noise from the great unwashed. And I don't know that any of it means a jot. Of course, it matters that people go out onto the street. But I've got to say, it matters a great deal more to me that people stop just going out into the street and then go back home. You've got to take the fight to the man. You've got to take it to the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, the administrative branches of government, the public health administrators. You've got to take it to the local mayors, to the local sheriffs, to the local police, to the local councillors, to the local parliamentarians and representatives. You got to, at some point, we have to get these people by the collar. At some point, we have to drag these people into the market square. At some point,
Right.
we have to hang them by the neck until dead if they continue to stick HIV/AIDS into our babies. This is pure murder. This is pure genocide. This is the harvest of humanity. I think we've been polite for far too
You
long.
are absolutely right. We need to understand who is the real enemy. Okay? We have 1% that declare total war on the rest of the 99%. That's what they're doing. We need to understand who is the real enemy right here, right now, and then it will be game over. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. Just want to get, Iris, your thoughts on remedy. How do good people of Israel, in your view, seek remedy? What is the path of least resistance to the highest outcome in getting remedy right now?
I'm sorry, but I didn't understand the word remedy. Can anyone?
What I mean is justice. I mean justice
Yes.
for the people. Yeah.
I want to begin with what you said about the Holocaust. The Israelis, even if we are second and third generation to a Holocaust survival, we are all traumatized. We cannot even hear this word, and it's amazing how we've been programmed. So we can remember this, the Holocaust one day a year, maybe stand and talk about it for one day, but never talk about it during the rest of the year, and not even think ever that anything can happen again. And when I resigned, what I wrote for my colleagues, I wrote them that my great grandfather, in Germany during the 30s, when everybody was busy in applying the regime, rules, he escaped his kids away from Germany, and that's why I'm here. And I'm not going to follow rules and not asking questions. And I think what's amazing is that we're talking about 1%, but they need the 99% to, they recruit most of the people, because the structure of the society is that you have a role and you don't ask too many questions. You work in a company, and it's like an army. You don't even realize that you work like in an army. Someone who is, ahead of you, tells you what to do, and that's your role in the company, and you're not supposed to ask questions about other things. And I'm an academic director. I'm not supposed to ask how students will enter the school. It's not my business. Oh, of course it's my business. If they have a barcode, it's not, I have to teach them how to play music. So in my case, I'm not sure about anger and rage. I'm not sure. I think the most important thing is not to obey. Is first of all making alternative. I don't. I mean, making an alternative word. Not to obey, not to need the metrics, to cut our relationship with them.
So let's look at that momentarily, Iris, because at the end of the day, it comes down to one of two things. Humans today are following either coin or conscience. It's one or the other. People who are just following orders are following coin. Coin is what determines whether you follow orders or not. And coin represents fear. It represents the threat of scarcity, the threat of loss, the threat of not having enough. And the entire planet has been thrown into a draconian thrall of fear for centuries based on coin, supremacy and dominion of that so-called 1% over the 99. I would suggest it's 0.001% over 99.999%. I know a bit more about the realpolitik and the demographics. But the point is that usury is the root of all evil. And the banks and the bankster class, which emerged through the hegemony of the Vatican complex over many, many centuries, issuing really from the 4th century in the Council of Nicaea. And we've got the systemic notion that we have to make money in order to survive. And then we have to pay tithes to Caesar, pay taxes in order to have the permission to survive. So there's this perversity that is systemically programmed into humans, believing that the fucking government is the thing that leads the production, is the thing that determines our fate. When we've just lost sight of the fact that government is supposed to be an apparatus that is there to serve our needs and our wishes, our desires, our dreams. So the perversity is in me when I am failing to recognize my own standing as a son or a daughter of God. That clearly to me is the issue. It all comes down to that. Rotem, I know you're an attorney, and which makes you cleverer than most of us at the best of times. But it's also clear to me that it's legality and law and the play with words and objectives and meanings and outcomes in the theater of courts and court systems and jurisprudence is so much a part of the problem of why we've ended up where we've ended up today. Because law, legality, and statutes serve dead fictions, corporations, corporate entities, trusts, fictions, never serve the living. So would you agree, more or less, that we need to completely redefine law and our ideas of jurisprudence moving forward?
So I'll say this. Law is a tool, it's an apparatus, just like government. And going back to what you said about coin, I'll say that before I was a lawyer, I was an economist. So my take on things are very much in this perspective of economy and law and money. They are social contracts. And most of life or human structures as we know them, the electricity in our house, the shopping that we do, it's all built on these contracts. So taking down the whole system could be devastating. So I think we need to be very, very careful in the way that we do things, not to make everything disappear and go into total chaos. The thing is that, and you said before 1%, I disagree. It's not even 0.0000001% that rule the world. It's a bunch of really not so many people, not even 1 in a million, maybe like 100 in a billion that rule the world. In the last 30 years since I graduated from university, we see all the big corporates eating the less bigger corporates, eating every big corporate there is, and now and they got so hungry that they start to eat and buy governments. So the way to buy government is to send lobbies to the parliaments, and most of the legislation in the world, I dare say, comes from lobbying and not from the ground, not for the people. It's not about helping the people. So the whole game is about control. How do we get control? We make people fearful. We make them a very in a survival mode. We let them think all the time that they are not going to survive either medically, financially, and so we weaken and weaken them. And what the government is just sipping out of a straw from the is sovereignty and spirituality. The whole thing is to separate the person from the spirit, to make him a surviving creature that is always, always thinking about his survival,
Yes.
always, not for one moment thinking about values, thinking about vision, dreaming his life and make his dreams come true. We want the people to always be surviving. This is the highway to control. Now, the whole corona thing, they say it's a pandemic. I disagree. I think that if you have some emergency state, like many countries have legislated the state of emergency and so took authority upon this state of emergency, is so the corona is more of a Trojan horse to get the state of emergency to have more and more authority. Because if there was such a horrible, horrible disease roaming the streets, it would have been reflected. We, each of us here would have known at least 100 people who died.
Yes.
This is not the situation. It's not reflecting. I'm sorry, this is not reflecting. So all of the people who actually think that there is a plague running around, open your eyes. Where can you see it? I dare you to take me to this stroll and show it to me. I am so curious to actually see it. And
Very good. Very
so
good.
it's all
One,
about control.
yes, yes, it is all about control. I just want to touch on something here, which I think would be very, very interesting for this panel to speak to. And it's something which I've been speaking about in lectures for the last couple of months. And it's something called the Universe 25 experiment. I'm not sure if anyone here has heard about it, but let me just throw up a slide to give you an example. The Universe 25 experiment, I'm reading this because it's a short brief, is one of the most terrifying experiments in the history of science, which, through the behavior of a colony of mice, was an attempt by scientists to explain human society. Okay? And the idea of Universe 25 came from the American scientist John Calhoun, this chap here. Okay, and he created an ideal world in a laboratory in which hundreds of mice would live and reproduce. Most specifically, Calhoun built this paradise of mice, a specially designed space where the rodents had an abundance of food and water, as well as a large living area. And in the beginning, he placed 4 pairs of mice that in a short space of time began to reproduce, okay, resulting in their population growing very rapidly. After 315 days, their reproduction began to decrease significantly. When the number of rodents reached 600, a hierarchy was formed between them, and the so-called wretches started to appear. Okay? The larger rodents began to attack the group, with the result that many males began to collapse psychologically. And as a result, the females did not protect themselves, and they showed more and more aggressivity in their behavior, with isolationing and lack of reproduction and so on. And there was a low birth rate which issued. At the same time, an increase in mortality in the younger rodents began. Then a new class of male rodents appeared, the so-called beautiful mice. They refused to mate with the females or to fight for their space. All they cared about was food and sleep. And at one point, the beautiful male mice and the isolated, aggressive females made up the majority of the population, right? According to Calhoun, the death phase consisted of two stages. Firstly, the psychological death occurred. This is a very important piece. And this was characterized by a loss of purpose in life. And as time went on, juvenile mortality reached 100% and reproduction reached 0. Among the endangered mice, homosexuality became rife, and at the same time, cannibalism increased, despite the fact that there was plenty of food and water. 2 years after the start of the experiment, the last baby of the colony was born. And by 1973, Calhoun had killed the last mouse in the Universe 25 experiment. But listen to this. He repeated the experiment 25 more times. And each time the result was exactly the same. So his scientific model, this Universe 25, has been used as a model for interpreting social or societal collapse. And his research serves as a focal point for the study of urban sociology. And I just wanted to raise that specter because it really speaks to so much of what's going on in the world today. The way in which the social engineering, the Fabianist agenda, the transgenderification, the mixing up of all of these archetypes and thematics in our lives is really bringing us to such a state of collective psychological or psycho-emotional distress. And I'm not aiming a gun here at LGBT. That's a matter for individuals, absolutely. Always was, always will be. But when it becomes a collective thematic played out by our governments, played out by the social engineer, and then of course on top of that you've got Anthony Fauci and Bill Gates and their satanic efforts to disrupt human genealogy. So that's the bit I want to speak to briefly and get some commentary from each of you on. And Israel being at the vanguard of that, because we know that that's the case.
Well, I think actually what you presented is something we know about. And I say know about is for those people that actually bother to learn and educate themselves and know a bit more about what social human behavior is. Because we can see that happening all around the big cities of the world. The bigger the city, the more populated the city is, the crime rate increases, and all these abnormal behaviors are increasing, and eventually things like that happen. So we know that, and I think once we know that, and that's exactly what my mission in the last 2 years, and apparently it's going to be my life mission, is about education. We have to educate ourselves, and part of the dumbing of humanity is to prevent us from this knowledge, different kind of knowledge that will make us get much better decisions. And there's a lot of things that were said here about fear and about coins, and these are decisions that if you go to the hardcore or the essence of where this decision is coming from, is if you're choosing fear, or you're choosing coin, or you're choosing the E quadrant, as Kiyosaki says, okay, it's the same thing. You're looking for security. It's false security. Because real security comes from full sovereignty. You have to take care of your own, and it's all
Bravo.
about building a better system. Because if we're going to be building a better system, we're actually subscribing to their method. It's going to be build back better. We don't want to build back better. We want to build anew, and we can start building anew right now. And I think that's what people here in Israel, and hopefully I see that all around the world, are actually doing. And that's part of the things we actually supporting very much. If we go back to what's really important for most of us, all of us, it's the children. And two things. First of all, it's the health of the children. And if you're conscious about it, that's the time you should take him out of the system. That's the time you should put him back home and don't let him go to school. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's non-compliance. Okay, do not comply if you don't have to engage into any act of resistance in order to not comply. You just have to do your own thing and support people that can help you do that. And I think the situation that we're at actually brought people to the understanding that they're not willing to send the kids. And we can see the adverse results from vaccines. We can see it everywhere in all different ages. So people are much more cautious about the booster shots. And when people talk about kids vaccination, they start taking a step back. They said, okay, it's all right if we're the guinea pig, but no one's going to touch our kids. And that's where women and fathers, mothers and fathers, step in and start making.
Look, let's discuss this momentarily. You've raised the specter of so-called vaccines. Let's just set the record straight. They're not vaccines. They were never vaccines. There is no part of these lethal chemical mRNA disruption gene therapy injections that have anything to do with vaccines. Number one, it's not a goddamn vaccine. Let's stop calling it that. But of course, I understand what you mean. They are lethal. Anyone taking boosters will be dead before Christmas, certainly dead before the end of next year. Absolutely. If you've taken 3, you're in deep, deep trouble. If you've taken 3 so-called vaccines, you will be lucky to make it to next summer. That's a fact. I've heard this from some of the world's leading medical scientists and doctors. Maybe you're lucky enough to have taken a placebo, and yes, a lot of placebos were administered all around the world. You may be lucky. The first wave of idiots who lined up to get their vaccines probably got placebos. And if you're still alive a year later, it's probably because you did get a placebo. Now, that would have been done by the status quo in order to create a false light of sympathy. Forgive me, a false light on the notion of vaccines being poisonous. But we know categorically what is happening to the mRNA. We know about the graphene oxide and the hydrogel. We know that hundreds of millions of people are being turned now into spike protein zombies. Your biology is no longer yours. You've been patented because what's taking place is CRISPR technology. Your mRNA is being interceded. You're not the same creature. Lean in, mothers and fathers. Lean into what I'm about to tell you. One of the world's preeminent psychics who speaks to animals and has a very impeccable reputation for many, many years in communicating with horses, dogs, cats, birds, all animals, contacted me a few weeks ago. And she said, there is something very, very wrong. I need you to know about it, and I need you to try and tell the world. She's been called in for the last few months by many owners and trainers of animals who are asking her, will you please communicate to the polo pony or to the racehorse or to the show dog or to the cat or to the parrot, because they're misbehaving. The animals are not responding. And she is communicating to these animals all around the world. And she is asking the racehorse or the polo pony, why are you not responding to your owner or to your trainer? And the animals are telling her, that's not my owner. That's not my trainer. She's then finding out uniformly that all of those owners and trainers who are having this problem have been vaccinated. So please understand this. This is where we're at in the 21st century. Once you've had these so-called vaccines, and your mRNA is clipped, you're not the same person. You've had some serious intervention there, intercession. You need to do some serious work in order to mend that. You can mend it. That's what we're learning. You can mend it. But it's going to take some superhuman acts of consciousness and consciousness in action on your part. Number one, own the fucking story. Own that you took a left fork in the road. Own that you did something out of fear, which is wrong action. At a time like this, when the whole of humanity is under threat, you are the problem. You people who are posturing with your morality and your social distancing and pretending that you're playing into something positive and helpful and protecting your grandchildren. You're doing nothing of the sort. If you move against your conscience, you are participating on the playground of the devil. That's the way it works. And it's vital that people all around the world recognize that there has to be a change of heart, a change of mind in order to turn the corner. Something called linguistic wave genetics kicks in. You can surrogate the ones you love and you can heal their DNA and their mRNA. That's a known fact. Dr. Gariev in Russia, look him up. Korotkov, many great doctors out there can prove this. Okay? We can surrogate one another, but we have to do it. We've got to start to stand in the now, own pure truth in our lives, step away, as Raphael says, from the false light jurisdictions of governments, trying to impose their authority or their jurisdiction over you, over your children, over your lives, over your fate. I'm going to invite each of the panelists to essentially wind up and give 3, 4, 5 minutes of their closing statements. Adam, can we start with you, my dear friend? Adam may have fallen off. His screen is frozen, so I'm going to bring you on instead. Iris, can you hear me okay? You'll need to unmute your microphone.
Hi, I did. Hi. Well, I think our spirit is so important. I think working, or being sovereign, working on not really only not waiting for every minute for it to be the end of this thing. Our old world will not be back. We have to create our terrific, amazing life in this reality, which means, like you said, not using, as much as possible, being independent without any authority, not using whatever, not going to the army, not going to school, not going to university, not doing the best we can to be independent and creating our good life in this, not just wait for it to be just to be to stop, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Iris. And thank you also for the very brave stand that you've taken. History, we're going to look over our shoulder in the days ahead. And folks like you on this panel are going to be exemplified as the true heroes of the time, for sure. And you thoroughly deserve to be. I can't imagine what it feels like to be in such a weaponized country as the corporation state of Israel, with its $250 war and intelligence apparatus that is designed to curtail all freedom of expression, all civil liberty, all the love and the flow and the harmonic of being a good human. The fact that you guys prevail, and not just prevail, but seem to be stepping into some kind of supernatural strength, that to me gives me and the rest of the world tremendous hope. But thank you, Iris Portugali.
I just want to tell you, I just want to tell you that 2 years ago, if I heard you say what you said right now, I would be so shocked and I would never want to hear you again. So I was asleep also. And during the past year and a half, wow, I realized that I've lived in what I thought about Israel and what I thought about our history. Oh my God, I was brainwashed. And I was one of the, patriots, whatever you want to say it. And I
Well,
cannot believe that I sit in this panel and I feel proud. I cannot believe it.
good. Well, I can tell you that there are definitely thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of good Israelis who are feeling the same way and will be watching this broadcast in the coming few days. There's one thing I want to say here before I bring on Rotem, and that is that I made a film in Romania about a week and a half ago. I'm in Portugal right now, but I made a film with the leading astrologer in that part of the world. She understands the old form of astrology, which they did hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and she's resurrecting that incredible craft. And this woman has an impeccable record of 100% in her prognostications. Okay, so she does this predictive astrological forecasting that is absolutely impeccable with 100% record, and she does the natal charts of countries as well. And I asked her to do the state of Israel from its inception. It has to be the corporatized state. So the day that the corporation Israel was ratified on a piece of paper with a bond, that's the date line that the natal chart begins at. And she did do that. And it's about a 20-minute long film. I'm actually going to drop it in at the end of this broadcast. Before I kill the broadcast, I'm going to let the audience watch that 15, 16, 17-minute film. But what she says on the natal chart of Israel and what Israel needs to do now, today, the people of Israel have got to break the bone of their state and reset it psychologically and intellectually. And there's a couple of things that they need to do in order to do that. So I would urge the audience, continue to share this, but wait to the end of the broadcast in a few minutes, and I'll let you watch that predictive natal chart of the state of Israel. Rotem, the FDA having now approved vaccines for children in Israel, the true Holocaust, by best accounts, is yet to come. From your perspective, how on earth can people of Israel apprehend the government in this insane orientation?
I'll tell you something that might surprise you, but I don't think that we should put any emphasis on the experimental drug because I think it just throws us away from the actual solution. And I do want to tell you that a month or two ago, some person approached me about his child that was injured by a vaccine, not this investigational drug, and he hit the jackpot with me because I finally understood the way that we can step out of it and how it's going to all be game over. And the game over is unity. All the people who woke up must hold hands together above narrative. And I have since got in touch with people from the Arab Society and also from the Jewish Orthodox Society, people who woke up and have stepped above the narrative. We all know that we've been lied to for decades.
Yes.
They tell us who to hate. They tell us why to hate them. They tell us things that are lies. We are not born to be the same. We are born to be different. Unity is between different people and not between people that are the same. We want to have a mutual truth and not one truth. Once we understand this, we go above the narrative, we hold our hands, and there is no investigative drug or FDA or any other organization. I would not even say the word that I'm
Yeah.
thinking. that is that can affect us. We have to rise above the holographic illusion that was created to us in order to control us.
Beautiful.
This is game over. And we are now going in Israel, like you said, Jerusalem. The meaning of Jerusalem is the completeness,
Yes.
not just shalom,
Yeah.
not just peace, because peace and completeness, the and completeness will come to Israel, and then it will flood the world when we hold hands together above narrative, not having any politician tell us who to hate and what to
Beautiful.
do.
Beautiful, Roxanne, and a lot of people commenting, loving your words here. Thank you. Couldn't agree more with you. And you've actually rounded off the broadcast on the right note, which is all about sitting right here, who we are, what we are, the quanta of the human condition, the human heart is also our way back home. It's how we move through this valley of death, this shadow of death, by simply being human with our
The
capacity to
power
love
of love
and be
is the
loved.
most power of love is the most powerful force in the universe.
It certainly
There,
is. We know that. We can measure the wave, the empathic wave of the human heart is the only wave form that can traverse the entire known universe. Raphael, your closing comments, my dear friend.
Well, I can say it in 2 words or 3 words. In God we trust. And I think it comes to that. But not just trusting God. God asks us to do one thing, to do a leap of faith and to take the action and really to build, to look at the past, first of all, to look at all the prophets. Any religion we look at, but we all come down to the same essence. And the prophets were told by God to do things. They mostly had to work with a very stubborn people, and we see it all around. All of the activists, we're trying to shake up people around us. We're trying to bring them awake and show them the way, but it's really not up to us. It's really it's sovereignty. It's each to his own to learn the material and to look for the people of inspiration, not of
Yes.
leadership, of inspiration, and to lead his own way. Together is a family, together is friends, together whoever is inclined to take part. And really, it hurts me. It hurts me a lot because I realize that we're going to be dealing with a lot of casualties in the forthcoming years, maybe decades. It's going to take a lot of time to to work with people's health problems. We're going to have a lot of death. We know that. We'll have to
Yeah.
work with a lot of orphans. We'll have to take care of all of them, and we will do that. And
Good.
we need to understand that now and start working towards that now and build the systems that allows us to have good nutrition for our body, for our mind, and for our soul. Because this body and all things around us are nothing but energy frequency. And once we know that, we understand that all we need to do, Einstein told it well, we need to change the frequency. E equals mc squared. And it can only be changed when you change the E. If you don't change the E, the result will always be the same. And the E is the energy. So, like,
Very
you're
good.
an activist for quite a long time, so you've been to quite a few demonstrations. I actually don't really support demonstrations. I think it's like it's fighting against someone. And I think instead of fighting against someone, we should build the thing we want to do. And I think that for Israel,
Very difficult to do that when you're not even allowed to leave your home and pick up your toolkit. And this is the problem
I,
we've got right now. Right.
I agree, but still, there's calmness in the eye of the storm. And we all need to find the calm in the eye of the storm because everything tumbles around you. You need to find your way to be calm and to make the right decisions, even if it sounds like the craziest thing. But not wearing a mask, there's nothing crazy about it. or not supporting the coffee shop that asks you for a barcode, there's nothing crazy about it.
Yep,
It's been
correct.
crazy to go and have a coffee at a coffee shop that asks you for that. That's
Very
crazy.
good. Very good. Thank you, Raphael, very much. Agreed fully with all of your words. Rotem speaks about the need for us to orchestrate a soft landing as opposed to a hard landing. That's one of my takeaways from today's panel. I agree with that. I say to people of Israel, sons and daughters of God, every blessed one of you, stop paying income taxes. This is a satanic nonsense. It's written into the mutant program of our dystopia. It's how we got to this state, because we were paying coin to Caesar. We were paying this insane creature, this Leviathan. And this is what it does. It corrupts ultimately. Also, please remember that taxes and tithes are an extension of your life force. So that's what you're doing. You're allowing yourself to be culled into the harvest wheel, the harvest of humanity. When you start to understand the truth about economics and currency and fiat and money, the totem of money itself is a totem of fear, a totem of time, a totem of scarcity. We are limitless and abundant in our divinity, in our supernature. And that is what this is all about. We're being required to look very, very deeply within ourselves, individually and collectively, to remember who we are. Candace Owens, the American activist, sent out a tweet this week saying, reading through Fauci's experiments, the one I find the most alarming is the use of an acid to destroy the region of a monkey's brain in order to magnify terror. They then simulate images of spiders and torment the monkeys with fear. Human DNA is 97% identical to apes. Why is Anthony Fauci funding that research over the last few decades? Well, he's doing it because he's the proxy of blood-drinking satanic elements. These are diabolical, demonic elements that have crept into the underbelly of our civilizational wheel over a very, very long period of time. And we have been asleep at the wheel, you and I, friends, with the hooked onto the pornography of trivia in our own lives, the Netflix, all of the comforts, the consumerism, this endless need to fill the vacuum by buying things and by entertainment and by Hollywood and all of that nonsense. So again, let's just take this perfect time of covidiocy to recognize that it's all about relationship with self. It's all about how we get back in tune with our divine flame. I'm going to thank Iris Portugali and Raphael Ben-Dor and Rotem Brown, and of course, Adam, who unfortunately dropped off. Friends, I'm going to share now the film that I did last week with the Romanian mystic. Just want to quickly pop my friends on one more time just to say, guys, peel off by all means. I'm going to run a 20-minute film now, but thank you so much for joining, and God love every one of you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, friends, so here we go. Let me share my screen with you. Video file. This is the state of Israel, the natal chart of Israel, my friends. I hope you enjoy this. Tune into the Lazarus initiative.com, lazarusinitiative.com, if you want to see the full symposium this week. We're also doing the natal charts revelation on Washington District of Columbia, the City of London, and the Vatican City, because we want to understand these power centers and what their fate is in the days ahead. It's very, very telling stuff. Enjoy the film. Bye now.
Hey, hey, wouldn't you know it? I'm freezing up here in the mountains outside Bucharest, about 3 or 4 hours. Don't ask me if it's north, south, east, or west, or I'd have to kill you, and I don't want to do that. I'm very happy to be here getting a crash course in traditional astrology as it relates to the most noble people of Europe. And I have this on very high authority, that this part of the world, Romania, is essentially the seat of nobility in the truest sense of noble and noble expression and noble destiny. It's a very important country. I'm getting to grips with it. I'm coming to understand it. And I'm very lucky to be seated next to the most famed astrologer in these climes. Her name is Georgiana, and this is she. She's going to give us a crash course in the natal charts as it relates to not just Romania, but she's also going to give us a little crash course on the state of Israel, being one of the most important geostrategic countries on earth right now. And wait for it, she's also going to be doing the Vatican City, London, City of London, and Washington, District of Columbia. Georgina, very happy to be with you.
I'm an astrologer. I've been studying astrology for 16 years and some past lifetimes, so it adds up. And I've been practicing astrology for kind of 12 years. Last year, with the COVID crap and everything, my country went into very deep problems with the economy, with everything, and I thought, okay, what can I do for my country? What can I do to help? I should try to understand why this current climate in my country, what's happening in my country. So I said, okay, I'll make the natal chart for Romania, and I found out our biggest problems and our biggest destiny. And I found out that where we're in now, it's a time of great change and extreme opportunities. And that we can even find solutions, and the solutions are written in the natal chart of a country. So,
well, back up.
Yeah.
The solutions are written into the natal chart of a country.
Yeah.
The political solutions and the sociological solutions.
Any kind of solutions.
Any kind of solution.
Yeah, because if you have a problem, it's cause and effect. Okay, if you have a problem, then definitely you have a solution.
Give us an example of Romania in 2021.
Oh my God.
I mean, you've already predicted everything that's happening in Romania.
Yes.
Based on this form of traditional
for this
astrology.
Year, yes, I was very interested to make the predictions for this year and next year, and everything that I predicted so far happened. The government crashed, which is very good. Well, it's not good now, but it's going to be good in the future. Okay, all the crises, all the things that are happening, and what happens with the population at large. Okay, and for example, I gave the problems, and I found out that people came and contacted me with solutions and said, hey, okay, we have a solution. We can do a financial solution, business solution.
Okay.
Yeah. So the important thing with the natal chart of a country is, if you find out where are the problems, because you can look at the problem globally and say, okay, this country is poor. Yeah, but that's not the problem. Maybe it is poor because people there have a low self-esteem and they sell themselves cheap, like for Romanians. This is our problem. This is historically, yes, and especially in this astrological equation that we have now since 1989. So,
1989 for the audience is when the revolution happened, taking Ceausescu down.
Yes, and the communists fell.
Right.
Into chaos.
That was into chaos, but that was a huge axiomatic moment in the history.
It is the new birth date for Romania, and everything that happened in the last 30 years is based on that date, 22 December 1989, 1530.
So when you cast the natal chart, you're looking from that date?
Exactly.
The birth of the new Romania is what you're looking at.
Exactly.
So you can tell what the fate of the new Romania is going to be.
And the fate for Romania, it's actually a very interesting one. The North Node, which is the destiny, each one of us have a destiny, and so the countries, and the destiny for Romania is to have North Node in 10th house in Aquarius, and that's to have a completely brand new way of governing.
Okay.
So what will happen in the very near future is that the government will fall, but instead, it won't be the new regime, or what you want to call it. It will be part of the people, not to the government with politicians.
Okay, so
as we know
so
it.
we don't want government 2.0.
No.
We want a real revolution.
Exactly.
In
And-
as much as we want to reinvent the entire metric
Yes,
of governance.
and this is going to happen to Romania.
Okay.
So this, that's why I say this is a time of great opportunity for Romania, and I think we'll see great things happening here.
So let's just look a little bit about Romania around the world. Romania, you've got 8-9 million people outside of the country. Is that correct? Something like
15,
this. 15.
million.
Okay,
That's
huge.
huge, yeah.
All around the world.
Yeah, and
Now-
you can see that in the NATO.
Right,
chart.
and there's a good reason why they fucked off, right?
Yeah, of course, because, well, briefly, in the communist period, you were prohibited to go outside the country, and there was this thirst for knowledge, for new things. But if you look in the astrological chart, you see that they went away because they have to repay their debt. We were a people that did not cherish what we had. We were filthy rich. We had everything, but we didn't cherish what we had.
Where's that wealth gone?
No, it's still here, but it is used by strangers, not by us, not by Romania, you know. And the thing is that because we didn't cherish what we had for the last hundreds of years, like 400 of years, we had been at the mercy of other conquerors.
You mean like the Catholic Church, for instance?
Here it's called the Orthodox Church, but well,
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Orthodox Church is a
Exactly.
franchise of the Catholic Church.
Yes. Oh, by the way, as a parenthesis, have you noticed that all the Orthodox countries are extremely poor?
Very poor.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Greece.
Right. Bulgaria, Romania, we are poor. That's a thing to think about. Okay.
Talk about the traditional form of astrology that you do.
Well, I'm more inclined to...
How is it different to modern astrology?
Well, modern astrology is mostly concerned with what you feel, what you think, your psychological state of mind, and that's nice. But when you have to do a prediction, you have to say, you know, this year you're going to get pregnant, you're going to get a divorce, you're going to crash your car, or somebody else is going to crash it, or you'll buy a home or don't buy a home because you'll lose your money. I mean, very material facts. If you're a good astrologer, you must be able to predict this.
Very good.
Okay?
So we need to move on to Israel.
Yeah, Israel.
Okay, so we're going to show this plate to the audience.
Yeah.
Walk us through it.
Okay, so the first chart is the natal chart of Israel. Israel was born on a Friday on 14th May 1948, and the hour 1600 hours, something like that, generally said, in Tel Aviv. Okay, so it shows the destiny. And what's very important to understand, the North Node, the destiny, if a country has a destiny, when it fulfills that destiny, it goes to the next level. So it dies and rebirths itself. So it has another birthday. Okay, so that's very, very important. And when we see that the country goes to fulfilling that that destiny, it means it's at the end of its existence.
Okay.
And it's interesting for Romania.
So you're telling me that Israel is on the brink of reformatting, falling? What are we seeing?
Now it's a very difficult time for Israel because
they've all been vaccinated for a start.
Yeah, but
so we're talking about tampering
why.
with the mitochondria of the people.
Yeah.
That's a serious change.
It's actually it's not a change. It's what you see in the world as an external expression, but inside it is the same way of doing things that their government always did. It's now just you see it.
Subterfuge.
And now the most important thing: what's the destiny for Israel? Israel has the North Node in the 7th house in Taurus. That means they have to have good, harmonious, peaceful relations with their allies and their enemies.
Okay.
I don't think they're doing that. I don't know. Right?
Okay. Very curious. Very curious.
So if they're not doing their destiny, then maybe they're doing the opposite, which is the greatest mistake that you can do in your
Which
your
means
life.
they're doubling up on the subterfuge, doubling up on the stealth.
Of course. And the greatest mistake for them is the South Node in the 1st house in Scorpio. That means to be very attached to their own way of doing things, seeing things. That means they're very selfish. and they do not accept.
Okay, so when you say they, because I have a lot of friends in Israel,
Yeah.
and they're the most beautiful, grounded human beings I think I've ever met in my
That's
life.
the population, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So we're
that's-
talking about what? The technocrats? We're talking about the crypto Jews, the Zionist element?
Yeah, good question. Good question. The problem is that the chart is for the whole people. And now, if a lot of people are innocent, okay, always. But if they support a corrupt government, then they're to blame
implicit.
too. Yeah,
They're complicit.
exactly.
They're involved.
Exactly. Okay. Good. So the problem is that. It's not a problem. It's a fact. Okay, I'm stating the facts. It's not problems. They're very proud people. That's not a bad thing. It's good because they have a very good image.
Yeah.
They have a very good image. But the thing and the population. See the moon. The moon, which is the population, is in Leo. It's very proud. It's very. They are proud of their heritage. That's a good thing, actually. We should be as proud as them. You know,
Okay.
that would be nice. And what kind of leaders do they prefer? We look at the sun. The sun is the head of the state. You know, it's in Taurus. They look for a person that can give them safety, financial safety for a long time. So they like to plan ahead. You know, like planning ahead.
But to get financial security today, you have to lie, steal, cheat, bribe, blackmail, threaten, murder. That's how you do it, because economics is the biggest lie in the history of the world.
Yes,
so
that's
this is
true.
why they've chosen these thuggish, brutal leaders, right?
It's because they agree with them.
Yeah.
They're proud. We can see here that the leaders, they enforce their authority towards their people. I mean, they're not kind to other populations, but they're not kind to their people either.
Understood.
You know, that's very important. But the people, the moon,
Yeah.
is in accordance because it's in the same it's in the same sign. It's in Leo.
Yeah.
So if they're tyrannical or what they are doing now because they're killing their own people.
Yeah.
Okay, see, they agree with it. I mean, they're the chosen people. They are supposed to make sacrifices because they're chosen.
Well, they claim to be the chosen people. I think the
course.
Irish, the original Celts in Ireland, might disagree. But let's carry on.
Okay, so the most important thing is that they have to learn. So the destiny, they have to learn to have peaceful and equal relationships. And the thing is that they are not good with agreeing with another party.
Bravo.
If they have just one mindset. I mean, if you want to be their ally, you have to say and do things like they want to do it. If not, then you have a problem.
Well, you have to be Jewish for a start.
Yes, but the problem is that they have to learn how to live with other people, with other nations.
Okay, is that going to happen? Based on what you're seeing?
No, because
Right,
they are very
exactly.
proud. The thing is that they have to learn not to be generous, to cooperate. If they don't learn this lesson of cooperation, to be open to others, to not to make compromises, but to make an equitable exchange.
yeah.
Okay, equitable. Okay, then they will lose their territories because Lilith, the vulnerable point in their natal chart, is in the 4th house in Aquarius. And when this thing happens, it means that they will always have problem with their territories, and that in the end
They will lose.
they will lose their territory. That's this is their biggest flaw. You know, each
It's also
country
their
has-
biggest fear.
Yes, because they do whatever they can to enforce force. To keep things steady.
Okay.
And another thing is that we look in the 12th house, which is the house of secrets, secret services, and so on. That's a very interesting house in general for countries, you know. And you see here, they are very good at communication. They are very good with entertaining relations with other nations, but they always have a hidden agenda. And it's not because what the TV says or what other people say. The chart says.
Yeah, I understand.
That's important.
I understand.
mean, it's confirmed in the chart.
But let's just cut to the chase. This
Yeah.
is the Lazarus Symposium, and what
Yeah.
we do is we cut straight to the
Exactly.
to the core of the matter. We all understand We all understand the throne of Solomon. We understand the 1,000-year reign of Lucifer that's supposed to take place. We understand the Rothschilds and their interest in rebuilding the Temple of Solomon and what they've been doing for the last 75 years. We understand the tentacles of these crypto-Jewish Sabbateans globally, from Russia to Albania, all around the world. This has become a real scourge of humanity. Again, I make the distinction. This is not Jews. This is the crypto-Jewish Sabbatean element. And it's about time that we spoke boldly about this. All around the world, people are becoming enraged. I've dealt with some of these motherfuckers in Hollywood, okay, and who control the media and essentially media. Silicon Valley and media are in the grip of this kind of element. And what we're seeing is the rise now of Nazification, fascism, totalitarianism, cultural Fabianist Marxism. That's what we're seeing. It's the greatest threat to humankind in the history of this world. We need to speak to it. Israel is part of the key to this, this logic, this language. So what can good Israeli people today do? How can they best navigate this fate?
To free themselves from this, not to be a Jew anymore. I don't know. Maybe it sounds
to become a
hard.
human.
Yes, exactly. I mean, to get rid of their tradition. This is the most important thing, and then I will get to the chart for this year, which is very important. So they have to learn to be not so attached to their heritage. I mean, it's good to be a patriot. It's good to be proud of who you are. But when you're pushing this,
that's cult programming.
Yeah, and they have to get out of this.
The cult program.
Yes, that's what good people should do.
Very good.
Good. So now we are moving to 2020, 2021. So the solar chart. This is important. It's for 14 May 2020, 14 May 2021. Okay. So this is the solar chart. Okay. This year, so we have two charts. The chart of tendencies, what it is possible to happen, and the composite chart, where we'll see what will happen based on this tendency.
We need to accelerate this section.
The tendency in this year, the Israeli people are extremely vulnerable. They have a vulnerable image. They have so it's a very vulnerable year for them, because they have financial problems with the money produced in their own country. Insufficient money. And
the American tax dollars are no longer going to continue to bail out in the way they have been.
I believe so. And how do you see they have money problems this year? Because they how it connects here. They become very aggressive with their military. They have a military press. So if you see the Israeli nation beginning to be more aggressive with their military, that means they're out of money.
Very good.
And that's why they have, it's a theater of war.
Very good.
They're doing theatrics.
Very good. Understood.
Okay, good. Now, they have problems with their, the good thing for Israeli people who are awake is that they have a window of opportunity this year, because the 11th house, the house of social justice, is very, is brutally aspected, but this is good because they will act. Okay, they have to rebel against the oppression, and it is shown. It is a huge oppression. It's Saturn with Jupiter and with Pluto in conjunction in Capricorn. It's a huge boot in their teeth. It's huge.
Very good.
It's hard.
Okay, understood.
And now we must look at the composite chart, where we see what's gonna. What they will do. The thing is that the Israeli government is good at keeping the balance inside the country. So they will stabilize it by lying. This is very important. They have Lilith in the 3rd house in Pisces. So they will lie this year to their own people and towards the international mass media, as they never lied before. So that's important.
Okay, that's a good one to watch out for, my fellow friends in Israel.
So everything that they say in mass media, it's a huge
deception.
lie. It's deception to cover the thing that they are vulnerable this year.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a hard for the people, for the good people in Israel. Okay. Advice. you have to get out of your roots, to
we've said
untie
that.
your roots.
Okay, and
Yeah.
Should we wind up now?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's pretty comprehensive. I mean, you've
Yeah.
given some very clear indicators
Yes.
to the fate of the state of Israel
Yes.
this year.
It's
This is
very
essential
experimented.
year.
Yes. And you know,
Okay.
as a conclusion, you know, when an animal is hurt and it's caught in a corner, it's going to be very violent
And dangerous.
and dangerous. This is what happens here. Okay?
Very
So this
good.
is the image that everybody should think about.
Georgiana, thank you.
Looking
Looking forward to seeing you live.
Yeah, sure. Can't
Okay,
wait.
folks, that's it. It's a wrap.
Okay, so what to say, folks? I hope you found that interesting. Leah, you've made a comment here saying that she started with the birth of Israel in May 1948. Maybe she should start 5,782 years ago. Well, look, in a sense, that's a relevant question, and I'll put it to our astrologer when I see her on the panel this weekend. But the bottom line is that this was a natal chart as it relates to the corporation state of Israel. So I'm the one who asked for this. I'm making a distinction between the corporation state of Israel and the genesis of the peoples. But then you've got to look at the Sephardic Jews as opposed to the Khazarian or the Ashkenazi Jews, and that brings us all into the rewriting of history and the correcting of history that needs to take place now. I'm doing a great deal of work right now with different researchers in looking to uncover the true history. And this is to do with Tataria, Tataris, and so on, the true golden age. It looks as though 1,000 years was taken out of our history books, a whole period of 1,000 years, quite seriously, friends. It's very, very serious stuff. But I'm looking at doing a 12 or 13 part series on correcting history. Israel and what we think Israel is and what we think the genesis of Israel is not what it is. These are narratives and deceptions that have invariably been spun. And then you've got people who are clinging on to the Torah. You've got people who are clinging on to the Testament, to the Bible, people who are clinging on to the Quran, people clinging on to the I Ching, people clinging on to the Mahabharata and the Upanishads. It goes on and on and on. The point that this astrologer was trying to make is that we need to transcend being Jews. We need to transcend being Christians. We need to transcend being anything and just step into our blessed humanity. So, friends, thank you for staying the distance with me. Much love to you all. And I will see you hopefully on the Lazarus Symposium broadcast on the weekend. Okay, much love.